You want to make money in this game, but you keep thinking it's about finding the perfect entry. That's where most men lose before they even begin. I learned this the hard way, not once, but over and over again, paying tuition to the market in sums that would make most people sick to their stomach. The truth is simple, but it isn't easy to accept. It is not the entry that makes you wealthy. It is not even the strategy. It is how you manage risk when you are wrong, and you will be wrong more often than you care to admit. I have seen men with brilliant systems go broke. I have seen mediocre traders survive and thrive. The difference was never intelligence. It was discipline. It was restraint. It was their relationship with risk. Let me give you something practical. 5 rules, not theories, not opinions. Rules carved out of loss, regret, recovery, and survival. You follow them, you give yourself a chance. You ignore them, and the market will eventually collect its debt from you with interest. The first rule is this: never risk more than you can emotionally afford to lose. Now, you may think you understand that. Most traders say they do, but they measure risk in percentages, not in emotional consequence. That is their mistake. You can risk 1% of your account and still panic if that money means something to you, if it touches your ego, if it threatens your sense of control, if it makes you stare at the screen like a man watching his house burn. The market punishes emotional involvement. The moment your trade begins to dictate your thoughts, your behavior changes. You hesitate where you should act. You act where you should wait. You move stops. You close early. You revenge trade. I have done all of it. Not because I didn't know better, but because I felt too much. So understand this clearly. Your position size must be small enough that your mind remains undisturbed, calm, indifferent, almost bored. If you feel excitement, you are too big. If you feel fear, you are too big. If you check the trade every minute, you are far too big. The goal is not to maximize profit. The goal is to preserve clarity. Once you have that, you can execute without interference. And that is where consistency begins. The second rule: always define your risk before you enter the trade, not after. Not during, before. Every trade must begin with a simple question: where am I wrong? Not where do I take profit? Not how much can I make? Where am I wrong? Because the moment you enter without that answer, you have surrendered control to hope. Hope is a dangerous companion in the market. It whispers to you when price moves against you. It tells you to wait, to give it room, to trust your idea. And before you know it, a small loss becomes something much larger. I have held positions I knew were wrong simply because I refused to admit it, not because I lacked knowledge, but because I lacked discipline. So you draw the line before the trade begins, a clear, rational point where your idea no longer holds. And once that line is set, it is not negotiable. You do not move it further away to avoid loss. You do not adjust it to protect your ego. You accept it as the cost of doing business. A trader without a predefined risk is like a captain without a map. He may sail for a while, but eventually he will be lost. The third rule: cut losses quickly and without hesitation. This sounds simple. It is not. The human mind resists loss. It seeks comfort. It wants to be right, and so it delays the inevitable. But the market does not reward stubbornness. It rewards accuracy and timing. When a trade proves you wrong, your job is not to argue with it. Your job is to exit immediately. No hesitation, no second guessing. Because every second you stay in a losing position, you are not just losing money. You are losing clarity. You are losing confidence. You are feeding the worst instincts you have. I have taken losses that were small and controlled, and I have taken losses that spiraled because I refused to act. The difference between the two was not knowledge. It was speed. The quicker you accept being wrong, the quicker you free yourself to find the next opportunity. Remember this: losses are not your enemy. Large losses are. A small loss is a business expense. A large loss is a mistake. And mistakes, when repeated, will end your career. The fourth rule: never average down in a losing trade. This one has destroyed more accounts than bad entries ever could. A trader sees price move against him, and instead of exiting, he adds more. He convinces himself he is improving his position, lowering his average, increasing his potential profit. What he is really doing is increasing his exposure to a bad idea. You do not add to weakness, you add to strength. If the market is moving against you, it is telling you something. It may not always be right, but it is always worth respecting. Adding to a losing position is not confidence. It is denial. I have done it. I have watched a small loss turn into something catastrophic because I refused to let go, because I believed I was smarter than the market. That belief is expensive. If your initial position is wrong, increasing it will not make it right. It will only make the consequences heavier. Discipline means accepting the first loss and preserving capital for the next opportunity. Because there is always another opportunity. Always. But only if you are still in the game. The fifth rule: protect your capital above all else. This is the foundation, the principle that holds everything together. Without capital, you cannot trade. Without capital, you have no edge, no opportunity, no future in this business. And yet, most traders treat capital as something to be risked recklessly in pursuit of quick gains. They chase, they overtrade, they ignore rules, they act as if the market owes them something. It does not. The market is not concerned with your goals, your bills, or your ambitions. It does not reward need, it rewards discipline. Your job is not to make money today. Your job is to ensure you can trade tomorrow. That requires restraint, patience, the ability to sit out when conditions are not favorable. There were times when I made my greatest profits not by trading, but by waiting, by preserving capital while others lost theirs. Because when the right opportunity comes, you must have the resources and the clarity to act decisively. If you have been careless with your capital, that moment will pass you by, and it will not wait for you to recover. These rules are not optional. They are not suggestions. They are requirements for survival. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you violate these principles, you will fail. I have lived it. I have lost fortunes and rebuilt them. And every time I fell, it was not because the market defeated me. It was because I ignored these rules. Understand this clearly. The market is not your enemy. It is your mirror. It reflects your discipline, your patience, your emotional control. If you are reckless, it will punish you. If you are patient, it will reward you. But it will always tell the truth. And the truth is this: risk management is not a part of trading. It is trading. Everything else is secondary. You may not like it. You may want to focus on entries, indicators, strategies, but until you master risk, none of that will matter, because you will not last long enough to see it work. Now, if you are serious about this craft, you must go deeper than just understanding these rules. You must live them. Moving forward, I will show you how to apply these rules in real market conditions, how to structure your trades with precision, and how to build the kind of discipline that does not break under pressure. Wait, observe, and be honest with yourself. Because the difference between those who survive and those who disappear is not knowledge. It is execution. You have the rules now, but rules, by themselves, do not save a man. Execution does. And execution is where most traders fall apart. A man can repeat principles all day long, but when money is on the line, when the trade begins to move, when uncertainty creeps in, that is when the truth is revealed. Not what you know, but what you do. So let us take these rules and bring them into the real world. Because the market does not care about theory, it responds only to action. You begin with structure. Before a single trade is placed, you must already know three things with absolute clarity: your entry, your exit if you are wrong, and your position size. Not loosely, not approximately, precisely. If you hesitate on any of these, you are not ready to trade. You are guessing, and guessing, over time, is expensive. You look at the chart, and you wait, not for movement, not for excitement, but for alignment. The setup must meet your conditions, not most of them, all of them. Patience is not passive, it is active restraint. There were days, many days, when I did nothing. Not because I was lazy, but because the market offered nothing worth risking capital for. Most traders cannot do this. They feel the need to act, to participate, to be involved. That need will cost them money. When the setup finally appears, you do not rush. You calculate. You measure the distance between your entry and your stop. That distance is your risk per share, per contract, per position. From there, you determine your size. This is where discipline becomes mathematics. If your account is 10,000 and you risk 1%, that is 100. No more. Never more. If your stop is 50 points away, then your size adjusts accordingly. You do not change the stop to fit the size you want. You change the size to respect the stop you need. Most traders do the opposite. They choose the size first, based on greed, and then force the trade to justify it. That is backwards. The trade dictates the risk dictates the size, and the size determines your survival. Now the trade is placed, and here is where the real test begins. Because once you are in, your job changes. You are no longer a thinker, you are an executor. The plan has already been made. The only question now is, will you follow it? Price begins to move, sometimes in your favor, sometimes against you. And with every tick, your mind will try to interfere. It will tell you to take profit early, to secure something, to avoid giving it back. It will tell you to move your stop further away, to give the trade more room, to avoid being wrong. Both instincts are dangerous. You must learn to sit. If the trade has not reached your stop, you do nothing. If it has not reached your target, you do nothing. You allow the trade to play out as designed. This is where most men fail, not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack stillness. They cannot sit with uncertainty. They cannot allow the process to unfold. So they interfere, and in doing so, they destroy the very edge they claim to have. I have had trades that would have made me a fortune, but I closed them early out of fear. I have had trades that should have been small losses, but I let them grow out of hope. Both were errors. Different emotions, same outcome. Loss of discipline. Understand this. Consistency is not built on brilliant trades. It is built on consistent behavior. You follow your plan when it is easy, and more importantly, when it is difficult. Now let us speak about winning trades. A winning trade can be more dangerous than a losing one, because success breeds confidence, and confidence unchecked becomes arrogance. You take a good trade, it works, and suddenly you feel invincible. You increase size, you loosen rules. You believe you have found something special. That is when the market reminds you of your place. You must treat a win the same way you treat a loss, with neutrality. It is simply one outcome in a long series. You do not celebrate excessively. You do not change your behavior. You log it, you learn from it, and you move on. Because the moment you let a win change your discipline, you have already planted the seed for your next loss. Now consider the losing streak. It will come. It always does. No system, no matter how refined, avoids periods of drawdown. The difference between professionals and amateurs is not the absence of losses, it is the response to them. The amateur reacts emotionally. He increases risk to recover faster. He takes trades that are not there. He chases the market, trying to force it to return what was lost. The professional does the opposite. He reduces size. He becomes more selective. He protects his capital even more aggressively. Because he understands something the amateur does not. Survival is the priority. If you can endure the losing streak without significant damage, you will be there when conditions improve. But if you allow frustration to dictate your actions, you will compound the problem. A bad week becomes a bad month. A bad month becomes the end. So when you find yourself in a drawdown, you step back. You review your trades not to justify them, but to evaluate them honestly. Did you follow your rules? Did you respect your stops? Did you manage your risk? If the answer is yes, then the losses are part of the game. You continue. If the answer is no, then the problem is not the market, it is your behavior. And behavior can be corrected, but only if you are willing to see it clearly. Now let me give you something most traders overlook. The importance of inactivity. There is a time to trade, and there is a time to do nothing. Doing nothing is not weakness, it is control. The market spends more time in conditions that are not favorable than it does in conditions that are. If you trade constantly, you are exposing yourself to unnecessary risk. You must learn to recognize when your edge is present and when it is not. This requires observation, study, experience. You watch the market without participating. You note its behavior, its rhythm, its tendencies, and when it aligns with your strategy, you act. Until then, you wait. This is not easy. It goes against human nature, but it is necessary, because every trade you take carries risk, and unnecessary risk is the fastest way to destruction. Now let us tie everything together. Risk management is not a single action, it is a chain of decisions. It begins before the trade, continues during the trade, and extends after the trade. It is in your sizing, your stops, your patience, your restraint, your ability to accept loss, and your ability to remain unchanged by success. It is in your willingness to do nothing when nothing should be done. Most traders look for a secret, a hidden strategy, a perfect indicator. There is none. What exists is discipline applied consistently over time. I did not build success on brilliance. I built it on learning from mistakes I paid dearly for. Every large loss I ever took could be traced back to a violation of these principles. Not one, not some, every single one. And every time I returned to discipline, to structure, to risk control, I recovered. That is the game. You will make mistakes. You will feel pressure. You will be tempted to deviate. But if you can return to these rules again and again, you give yourself a chance to endure. And in this business, endurance is everything. Because the market is not conquered in a day. It is not mastered in a month. It is a long road, one that tests your patience, your character, and your ability to remain steady when everything in you wants to react. So, the question is not whether you know these rules. The question is whether you will follow them when it matters. When the trade is against you, when the profit is within reach, when the losses begin to stack, that is where traders are separated, not by knowledge, but by control. And control, true control, is built on risk management. Master that, and you give yourself something rare in this business, a chance not just to win, but to last.